Welcome to MacroEdge Radio. Please note that the content aired on this program is intended strictly for entertainment and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or professional advice. The opinions, discussions, and views expressed by our contributors, guests, and associated MacroEdge staff are their own and do not necessarily represent the official stance, strategy, or opinions of the MacroEdge organization or any of its affiliates. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, MacroEdge Radio makes no representation or warranties of any kind expressed or implied about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability of the content of this show. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. We do not endorse or assume responsibility for the accuracy or reliability of any information offered by third-party websites linked through the show or any website or feature linked in any banner or other advertising. We will not be a party to or in any way be responsible for monitoring any transaction between you and any third-party providers of products or services. All audio content of MacroEdge Radio is the intellectual property of the MacroEdge organization, and any use, reproduction, or redistribution of this content without the express written consent of the MacroEdge organization is strictly prohibited. All rights reserved. Good afternoon, everyone. This is John Galt speaking, and welcome to MacroEdge Radio number 18 with Cat B as our special guest. We are going to be discussing the restaurant industry, which is your actual thermometer into the one and only middle class. And how is this part of the middle class? Well, I'll let Kat give her bio, her history, and a little bit of description of what she does. We can't go into great detail because she is so inside. She probably knows the secret formula for how much salt to put on the McDonald's fries. But the reality is this. We have a great show to give you the thermometer of where the economy is for the lower and middle class. Everybody who has money is able to sit there and buy whatever they want. You go to an upper class restaurant, you go to a high-end restaurant, you go into a winery, etc. You see different things depending on what part of the country. However, when you hit the middle class, your Applebee's, your Outback Group, your Darden restaurants, and the chains throughout the nation, you get a very good idea as to the feeling of what the economic thermometer and temperature is. This is why we need a guest like this, and she has been a godsend and a guide to a lot of us who don't get involved in this part of the economy, who don't pay attention to this. So without further ado, as we bring everybody online, Kat, welcome to MacroEdge Radio.
Hi, John.
Hi, Kat.
That is about the greatest introduction I've ever received in my years in this business, so thank you so much for that. I'll just give kind of a brief overview of some of the, I certainly won't show the secret sauce that I've been in, but I've been incredibly blessed, very fortunate that I've been in this space for, I don't want to date myself, but almost over 20 years. Started in high school, went to get out of it, and quite frankly, jumped right back in. I primarily have focused in the fast casual space. I have worked in all types of different sectors of our industry. I've done everything from startups to large multinational brands. I've also worked domestically and internationally. Yes, I can talk all day long about the restaurant space. I love it. Quite frankly, what has paid my bills. When you've been in the industry this long, all of your friends happen to be restaurateurs as well. So no matter what conversation I have or whatever friend I'm calling on a Friday afternoon, we've all been in this business in different aspects, from operations to ops excellence to supply chain to construction to you name it. It's a special place to be, and I'm happy to share some insights with you today.
This is fantastic. And folks, let me explain something real quick. Why this is important, and she just laid it all out in one big picture. It's from the inception construction to the final phases. If you don't understand that, if you haven't been exposed to the industry, I had friends who've owned bars and restaurants. I've helped out behind the bar. I've helped out in the kitchen just as a favor on occasion. She will give you a picture as to how the middle class is reacting. So let's get the thermometer going. Where are we at in the fast casual industry right now?
Yeah, I'm happy to, I've had a few sleepless nights. The restaurant business, let's just be really honest about it, it's always been highs and lows. Throughout my career, whether it's So summer, we have an election year, um, people trading down. You kind of wash, rinse, repeat every years as you do kind of regular business cycle. So right now what we're seeing and kind of how we got here, and it was just a little plug to everyone in this group that I've had an opportunity to interact with. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, a lot of us in the space, you're reading all these headlines about, oh my gosh, look at the restaurant sales. They're up 10%, 12%. I was laughing. It's like, woohoo, restaurants are back, right? COVID's done. Restaurants are back. Look at the sales. We're all kind of punch drunk and hungry, and we just can't even keep up. But a few of us that have been in this business for a long time started to notice that some of these headlines really didn't make sense to us in the sense of these transaction counts. So speaking with friends at larger brands, they're like, yeah, we're up 10%. I'm like, wait a minute, but didn't you take a 15% price increase over the last 24 months? No, you're not up. And so what we started to see really into April and May of last year was this softness in transactions. But everybody was saying, hey, look at us, look at the sales, look at top line sales. And it wasn't until just most recently, as everybody was really in tune to all the earnings reports, those transactions are really starting to rear their ugly head. I kind of called it was the Wizard of Oz, right? Look at our sales, don't look behind the curtain. And no one really was telling anyone in the business because we were all kind of, okay, Starbucks has taken price, McDonald's has taken price, let's tuck in right behind them. And typically, prior to coming out of COVID, you were incredibly thoughtful about your price increases. It had to be, you had to line up, okay, is this product that I'm selling really aligning with what I'm going to charge for? And as we saw grocery prices go up, the restaurants kind of tucked in behind them. And as I was sharing with some of my friends, the difference is, specifically with groceries, those prices come down. It is a dynamic price. Well, once these restaurants started taking these prices up, we don't take our prices down unless we're discounting. And so where I think we're at today is all of a sudden the music's just gotten really quiet for us. The transactions are hurting. People aren't coming in the front door. And because we cannot continue to hide behind same-store sales or increase the volume, that scab, which is transactions, is now showing. And so where we're seeing today is, people are trading down to fast casuals for some reason. People really aren't trading from fast casual down to QSR. And unfortunately, in the QSR space, with all of the headlines and, where they've gone with pricing, people are seeing it as a luxury in that kind of lower upper middle class. So as we're sitting here today, that's kind of how we got here. And I know I went fairly quick. I'm happy to dig into any of that, but I think that's the answer that everyone's starting to talk about now. No longer can, just for example, Dutch Bros, their same-store sales revenue is up 7%, 4%, but that's off a 7% price increase. And people are starting to get attuned to that, and they're starting to notice, and it's starting to scare people.
Well, I'm going to follow up because Greg Crennan, one of the people who is part of the group, posted a fantastic screenshot about same-store sales performance and U.S. trends. And we noticed that Wingstop and Chipotle, respectively, in Q2, 29 and 11% up traffic, but everyone else is declining. Wendy's 1%, Burger King flat, McDonald's negative 1%, Taco Bell up 5%. I have my own commentary on that. I'll reserve it. Starbucks down 2%, KFC down 5%, Pizza Hut, who got rid of their sit-down restaurants, which is a huge mistake, down 1%. So when you see that, that's the middle class essentially, isn't it?
It is. That's your core. That is your core customer. And what we're, either people are just kind of making that choice right now, which is, I'm going to go out once a week, where before they were going out 2 to 3 times a week, right? Out of convenience or the affordability of it. Whereas now they're making those decisions I'm going to maybe cook that at home, or I'm not going to go to IHOP to get pancakes. I'm going to go buy it at the store, and I'm going to hang out with my family on Sunday morning. But you bring up Chipotle and Wingstop, and I had to giggle a little.
Oh, I totally understand. I'm not going to comment on their food content. I'm not going to comment on specific chains, but I will say this. I've noticed that there is a regional and recency bias with a lot of this reporting. Do you see that reflected on a national scale, that in some parts of the country these chains are doing excellent, and other parts the local competition is curb stomping them? And I'll be quite honest, I'll tell you, you know where I live in Sarasota County. We're sort of the snobs of the snobs. We're the third or fourth wealthiest county in Florida. We sort of like our local restaurants more than we do the chains, and I think that shows up in the numbers. Is that not a national trend in your opinion?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Listen, you live in the snob of the snobs. I'm in the Pac Northwest. I don't think they allow chain restaurants to open in Portland and Seattle. We're food snobs up here. What I have heard from my peer group and from folks that I talk to a lot that have what I would call those a little more upper scale fast casual brands that people are excited to go eat at, we're talking to each other. We're seeing sales declines in Houston, right? We're seeing sales declines in Denver. You see it in Chicago, right? So for us, when we're looking at it, the most important thing is if I see softness in a market, then we can go figure that out. The bad part is we're seeing softness in all markets across the country.
Is this a situation where it's based on economic performance, or is it more based on the chains or the various restaurants themselves failing to modify menus, prices, etc., to accommodate those regions?
No, that's a really good question. When you kind of look at it and looking at these different buckets, and when you're trying to kind of figure out, okay, well, bankruptcies have been in the news, store closures have been in the news, and I was actually talking to Mr. A a little bit about this prior to this call. Kind of 2018, through kind of the late heading into COVID and even coming out of COVID, there was just a lot of competition, and it's a little bit of a joke in our industry where I'm Joe and you're Bob and you're John and we're pretty good at burgers. So, hey, let's open a burger concept. And all of us that have been kind of in the, out the battlefield in this industry, we're like, hey, welcome in. It's not fun, but go ahead and give it a whirl. And so what I'm thinking, when you kind of look at it broad-based, coming out of COVID, or even over the last kind of 2 years, those brands that aren't succeeding, or quite frankly, I feel like it's kind of thinning out that herd. They didn't innovate coming out of the gate. They haven't thought about their menu. They're not bringing anything to the table to excite people to come back in. Quite frankly, those that are successful right now have dug into whether it's menu innovation, line extensions, thinking through how they're really digging into social media, right? Anyone right now that's telling me that they're working on a website for the restaurant, I laugh. I'm like, put all that money in your social. No one goes to your restaurant website anymore. And I think that's what you're starting to see. You're seeing this kind of thinning of folks that either didn't come out and think, okay, we've a little bit. We can't continue to pile on overhead and grow without thinking, is this prototype store, this size of store, really what's going to fit us now that the world's changed a little bit, right? Pre-COVID, the third party was there, but it wasn't as prevalent as you're seeing today, where today it's, 30 to 40% of your business. And so I was speaking with some operators that I know that have kind of come out recently that haven't been doing that well, and they were still signing up, 2,500, 3,000 square foot stores. And I'm kind of scratching my head as why, 40% of your business isn't coming in your front door anymore. So I think that there's been some brands that have been really thoughtful about how they're going to continue to innovate. Even if sales are going down and transactions are going down, how can you continue to bring people in that front door? How can you excite them? So I think right now, over the next couple of quarters, people are really going to dig into loyalty. Um, Everyone can thank Starbucks for starting that. They should get 10 cents of every loyalty program, I think, that people do. So there's ways to attack it and there are ways to be thoughtful about it. It's those right now that just don't have a plan, and it's going to be too late.
Well, I'm not. I don't like to mention specific chains, but one of my favorites, because I was a beta tester for Outback Group. Carrabba's, Outback, Fleming's, some extinct restaurants which unfortunately failed. When you see restaurants that have been around for decades start to fail to innovate, is that not a concern that the middle class is abandoning that and moving out of that kind of market? Or is it just a fail to innovate? I mean, it's a crazy question, but we love some of the rest. Bonefish, Fleming's, but we look at the mix of restaurants within these groups, and it's like some are staying ahead of the curve, others are not. It seems to be impacting the entire brand. And Darden was smart. They shedded Red Lobster. Look what happened to Red Lobster. You look at what's going on with the various groups around the country, and you say, why didn't we think of that? So why aren't they thinking of that? Is it a old mentality from the business model, or is it more of just to fail to recognize the evolving consumer?
It can be a bit of both, but the bigger part for me is just failure to recognize the new consumer. I was talking about Red Lobster the other day, and you feel awful for him, but I think that one story I could tell was I just told people Red Lobster was my grandma's favorite brand. She loved Red Lobster. If she knew, and she's not here with us anymore, but if she knew Red Lobster went bankrupt, she'd be devastated. But I don't know anybody in my friend group that's devastated. And quite frankly, I feel bad because a lot of us in this industry were looking around like, oh my God, that's a huge brand to fail. But when's the last time we actually ate there? Or when, hey, Friday night, let's go to Red Lobster. And that's no knock on their product or what they do. It's just, it lost its prevalence with the innovation that has been coming out. So, some brands have tried to innovate and I don't think they got it right. Unfortunately, I can't speak to some of those, but I think you're kind of hitting it on the nail on the head, which is some of these brands have just been dated and there hasn't been thought into the design. And when you're not building stores, you will stop not just innovation, but thinking about your operational execution, your training, how you're hiring people. What is that experience going to be like in the store? Where I think some of these newer brands or much kind of foot forward brands are really digging into that.
I think you're 100% correct because let's face it, folks, when was the last time you went out to Steak and Ale? Which was one of my favorites way back in the days. Yes, I'm showing how old I am. I admit it. So let's go forward.
Well, John, they're coming back.
No way.
Steak and Ale just opened their first restaurant, so I'll have to figure out where they did. I can't recall off the top of my head, but they're back, baby.
Oh, if they have the bourbon brown sugar steak again, I'm back. Because that was one of the greatest meals ever, way back in the day, obviously. So let's proceed forward to the franchisees angle of this, because franchisees are in a tough situation. We see the advertisements, believe it or not, down here on local radio and television, and also on the internet for our newspapers and stuff. For hey, $500,000, you can own XYZ. The problem they don't understand is, well, Sarasota County is a prime example. You also have to pay the locals to get that permit cleared and buy the land and everything else. I notice that people don't understand that the $500,000 you're paying for the rights for the franchise don't cover the initial losses. From what I understand, and tell me if I'm talking out of my old butt on this, because it's been years since I've dealt with this industry at all from a friend's perspective. You have to have $1 million allowed for losses, training, building, and everything else on top of the $500,000 just to get the franchise rights.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to dig into that just a bit. And it kind of speaks to where some of my fears or things that I think are coming forward for us are starting to take shape. So, franchise is looked upon by most really good concepts. As we've looked at new brands that have come online, whether they're, extending out a category that's been around or kind of defining a new category, right? So, years ago, you had the fast casual pizza kind of boom. You've had the better for you burger boom, right? These kind of wars that set out. And the biggest part of that was a lot of these brands wanted to be first to market. And first to market meaning, they could only grow so fast based upon, the money they had in the bank. Let's just be honest. And to build out a store, you're talking anywhere from, $1 million to $1.5 million. And that's all inclusive soft and hard costs. So a lot of brands in the early 2000s, or as we came out of the great financial crisis, these new innovative new brands were, they wanted to be first to market. They were getting a lot of fanfare from our trade magazines, right? QSR, Restaurant Business Online, Nation's Restaurant News, Top 50 Breakout Brands. Let's all kind of get in and go. And in that day and age, that really sprouted copycats. So when I look back to, someone like Starbucks that, they didn't just create a brand, they created a category, right? So I'll always be very thoughtful about that brand, right? They created a category that so many people copied, but if they would have done it today, I think it would have been incredibly difficult for them just for the speed of social and the speed of news and everything else. So you wanted to go grab franchisees because if you had a cool brand in, call it Portland, Oregon, and you don't want that brand to be second to market or third to market in in Florida, you go find a great operator there to go partner with, and they're going to go, you give them kind of rights to that market, right? Great operators or great company-owned stores, they don't do one-off franchisees. They go to folks that sometimes are quite frankly bigger than them to go partner with them so they can learn from them, and they know that they're going to take care of that business. In most recent years, some really great franchise groups out there that have, 300, 400 brands, 400 stores or units under their belt. Maybe they have 2 or 3 brands with them. They're always looking for an up-and-coming concept to go partner with and franchise, not only to add to their portfolio, but to give a pipeline for the talent that they have within their franchise organization, right? If you've got a great director of operations, go get another brand under your belt so they can become a VP, right? It's a way to kind of keep those great people within your stores or your organization. And so what we've been noticing most recently is there hasn't been a lot of that. And I think, and it's no knock on the industry, a lot of the franchise groups that have been coming out as of date are doing these kind of one-off, one store. And it's really unfortunate because I read the stories of, it's Joe who was a teacher and his wife who was a nurse. They're spending all their money that they had in savings to go open up this XYZ franchise. And as you and I both know, you don't have to be the world's best operator, but you should understand the industry that you're getting into. So they open up that store and they get their fanfare, and sure, your opening weeks, you've got a great honeymoon, things are going great, you've hired 40 people from your community, and then as things start to soften, as they do, you have to start looking at that P&L. And so when you're looking at a franchise operator, whether it's a one-off or, they got 2 locations, quite frankly, most franchise agreements, you're going to look at 4% at the lowest to 8% of your top line sales are going right back to the franchisee. Now you got to couple in 1 to 2% of what you call marketing, so that national marketing fund. And then you're adding in the third party, the technology, all of those other accoutrements that come down where typically as a franchisee or even as a company-owned operator, 20% unit contribution was our gold standard. That's what we operated off of. That's what was our success. That's how you train your managers. you take less, you want 30% or less the labor, 30% or less your COGS, 10% is going to be your occupancy, 10% is going to be other operating expenses. So you're going to be left with 20 cents on that dollar. But as a franchisee, you're already erasing all those small percentages off of your top line or off your bottom line. And quite frankly, now these folks have gone from, call it maybe 15% unit contribution down to low single digits. And you and I both know we all work really hard, but do you want to work that hard for a single digit contribution for sales? Not me.
No, no, I don't want to have to sit there and work for a 3% margin because the variable cost will override you instantly.
Yeah. And some of these things that have popped up for us, like in that other operating expenses line, is third party. It is we have to have it now that we've turned on that kind of spigot within our stores. But that's 30 to 40%. They're charging us low end is 15%, high end 30% for every sales that they're bringing into you. So you're trying to offset those costs, so you'll raise your prices on third parties so you can kind of try to make that up a little bit. And they'll get upset with you, and they'll take you out of the algorithm if you take your prices up too high. But that's one of the things we're all talking about is that percentage of our business we no longer can control, right? It's a little bit scary where you can't control your own destiny when 30 to 40% of your sales is being done by someone else. Like you can't control how that burger tastes when it gets to your store. If it's hot, you're just kind of blindly having to partner with these people and hope that they take care of your business. So I always say there's two things in the restaurant space that I hate, which is third party, and I hate Yelp, because anyone that eats at a restaurant thinks that they can share their opinion of it, which is great, right? But the two things that I use when I travel is Yelp, and when I go home tonight, I'll probably order third party. So it's a very big love-hate relationship we have.
Oh, I totally understand, because I look at Yelp as sort of the Nextdoor/Facebook, and it's nothing personal against people who use Facebook. I know you 70-year-olds love it. The truth is that I see the criticisms, then I go to the restaurant, I get a great meal, and you sort of say, okay, they're full of it. And a lot of it, and you don't have to fill this blank in, Kat, unless you just want to chime in, are employees who were terminated for poor quality work. Am I not correct? Or, you see it in the hotel industry too. I see it when I travel overseas. I see it when I travel in the state of Florida. Disgruntled employees, unfortunately, make up a decent percentage of the negative reviews, and you can't control that.
Yeah, no, I think for a lot of us business owners, Glassdoor? It's a total Ponzi. Because no one leaves a good review, right? So Glassdoor kind of measures the sentiment of employees working at your business or former, and 99% of them are a parting shot typically, and you have to pay Glassdoor in order to respond to it. So yeah, there a lot of these kind of popped up, whether it's Yelp or Glassdoor or you kind of name it, Google reviews. But yeah, it's a cost of doing business.
And it is a risk. And it's in the manufacturing side, which is where I'm at. And it's also in any other industry. Folks, before we go further with Kat, because I have some really good questions for her, because she's seen my writings. We've talked privately in the MacroEdge group. I'm just going to bring this up real quick. If you're not a subscriber to MacroEdge.net, Ozone Access, folks, MacroEdge.net/Ozone Access. Go there, sign up for the 2-week free trial, get the data you need. We get people referring to us on national radio and television all the time at MacroEdge. The reason that's important, we provide alternative opinions, actual data, hard facts. That's why we invited Kat on, because we have some hard questions that none of us are experts on, or most of us aren't. I don't have a restaurant. I've never invested in the industry. I was told by a friend who did, unless you're crazy, don't do it. Kat, I respect your craziness because you've actually made it work. My question for you is this. Has the commercial real estate property boom deterred a lot of people from entering into the industry and impaired the capital returns for those startups. It's a hard cost. There's nothing you can do to avoid it. If a property was worth $250,000 6 months ago, and then speculators drove it up to $400,000, does that not impair the ability to begin a restaurant in an area which is prime for it? We have a flood zone now. It wasn't a flood zone before, known as Lakewood Ranch. Hey, guess what, folks? Ruth Chris has expanded there. Everybody's expanding there. However, when I was a kid, it was a flood zone. It was a pasture with swamp. Now all of a sudden everybody built something there and they're like, oh my God, we had rain, it flooded. This is something that people do not take into account. They bid the property prices up. Is that an impairment for startups?
Yeah. What I kind of have dealt with day to day, my experience has always been with corporate company owned, right? Which has been fun and exciting for me. I have worked in franchise slightly, but being a franchisor and with licensed groups, which is a big difference between those two. But when it's come to, at least recently, speaking with some folks that I know in other brands that are trying to expand, the hard part is we're all out there looking for that same size, and we all want the end cap. And we want it to be, whether it's a first generation or second generation restaurant. There's a lot of work and extra costs that go into, hey, this might be a great spot. Would love to put a restaurant here, but it was a bank. So now I got to put in a grease trap, and that's going to cost me $35,000. I got to go, install hood vents, all the things that come with it. So what we've been seeing is, and I kind of can maybe draw a picture. So years ago, entering into new markets, when we were doing real estate tours and working with brokers, a lot of times we were out looking at dirt. And I was doing a real estate tour in Houston, and I just about lost my mind. It's like I just drove an hour to look at a patch of dirt. Just imagine this. It's going to be an HEB. There's going to be, XYZ here. Nowadays that's not happening. We're just not seeing these new daily needs centers or that kind of construction that we would typically go into. It's not popping up. So what's really been difficult for us the last kind of 2 or 3 years is we're all kind of primed and ready, those of us that have that vision to grow, but we're waiting for someone to close. It's almost created this inflated market that doesn't make sense, right? That we're trying to get into these same spaces because really nothing new has been coming online for us.
That makes perfect sense. And this brings me to the other side of it, because with every bubble, we see the same thing. Was there a bubble of I'll use the term younger generation because they usually have the big dreams, of too many people thinking they could succeed in one of the most competitive, difficult industries in the United States and not realizing the cost-risk formula properly and creating more issues for the industry rather than sitting there and improving it? Because I've seen way too many franchisees, and I'm not going to mention names, that have expanded faster than the demand was there.
Yeah, or they allowed others to cannibalize their stores. I lost my train of thought because I started thinking about cannibalization. So when you're speaking to why, getting into this space, it's highly competitive. And it is. Tell me another industry other than maybe some retail where I might have the coolest tie shop that I just opened in a really hot part of town in, Issaquah, Washington, and then someone can open up a Thai restaurant 2 blocks down, right? And I'm like, hey, where'd everybody go? It's hard, and I would always tell people, if you're really going to invest in it and you want to learn the business, go work for a great organization, right? I'm here where I am in my seat today, not because I'm smart. I'm here because I worked with next level leaders and incredibly smart people that mentored me throughout my career and said, hey, you haven't been exposed to this. Let's go expose you to that. So when I look at some of these FDDs and what these franchisors can supply for you, I just think sometimes they need to go a little bit deeper, right? Because once things go south for you in your restaurant and you don't really know how to navigate out of it because A, you haven't experienced that before, or you don't have a network of people to call and try to figure out why, it's going to be really hard and you're probably going to fail.
That's a great answer because I think you're correct. And now this brings me up to my last question before I bring someone else on to talk to you real quick. Is the industry as a whole or on a regional basis prepared for a major recession? I don't think they are because there's been way too much buildup nationally and regionally for a lot of these companies. Is there a shock coming that most are foreseeing?
You know, I try to be positive, right? Because it pays my bills.
Well, you've heard my stuff. You know, I am Dr. Doom. So.
No. No, I know I giggle about that because, yeah, I mean, I know how it felt, right? Like I went through the GFC in this industry and I know, what that experience was like and hiring people that, one of my restaurants years ago I hired and every single person had a degree or even a master's. And, you know, we'll always get through it and we'll come out of it. Do I think people are prepared? I think some are. I think the ones that you're seeing that are trying to be really thoughtful about, you know, what is our longer term thought process around, whether it's really digging into our loyalty so that people are going to come and see us. How can we look at what we're offering and continue to make things that are craveable that people want to come eat, right? And then I also think focusing to, you know, for some of us, people don't mind getting, you know, a bag handed through a window to them with food in it, but I'm willing to pay a little bit more if someone behind the counter is going to tell me thank you. Or if they're going to be, quite frankly, just nice to me when I'm going up to order my food. And we've seen that decline, you know, specifically around just that hospitality and kind of care and compassion that's come through with the food that we serve. But I think that people are willing to pay a little bit more to have that better service and in a really, whether it's consistent, something that you know that's craveable in quality, they will come back for that. So I think those that are digging into how can we continue to enhance what we're doing, it doesn't have to be just around labor savings or, you know, hey, we're going to just do a digital footprint store. You know, they got to be thoughtful about, you know, who is our consumer right now, who's interacting with us on social, how can we continue to promote our brand? And quite frankly, people just have to execute now. Over the next few months, you're going to see more of this. You're going to see bigger brands eating up smaller brands. Quite frankly, moving to like a shared service model, right? That's been the difficult part with growing over the last 2 years is, you know, the cost of labor in your store has gone up, but everyone on this call knows the cost of labor for your payroll, recruiting, your AP specialist, all of those costs have gone up as well. And so that's just a lot of burden onto these smaller regional brands that have kind of that corporate overhead. So it'll be kind of open season for the bigger brands to go, hey, we're going to do a shared service model. My payroll person that's doing Cheesecake Factory and this particular brand is not going to do this brand too, right? So just how can you minimize those overhead costs that are, you know, really impacting your stores? And so, yes, I think you'll see some more bankruptcies because people are out of money or they can't access capital as we have been able to in the past. You know, I hate to bring up kind of PPP or ERC. A lot of that was a bridge to keep some of these restaurants afloat. They used that up last year. The holidays last year, which are typically soft in our industry, were very soft. And this summer has been soft, softer than typical. And that's, as I've spoken with people in Florida to Jersey to Illinois. And we really count on those Memorial Day weekends, the 4th of July holidays. We count on that to really help our business through the slower season, right? Once you're through August, your sales fall off a cliff until you kind of pop back into some of those holiday parties. And then January and February are death marches until you can prep yourself to get ready for Memorial Day. And so when you have the softening that we're seeing back in Q3 and Q4 of last year, and then still today in, your summer months, unfortunately, a lot of these folks just aren't going to be able to navigate through it.
100% agree, because we've seen something we haven't seen since I was younger, and that was the seasonal closings of some restaurants from during the traditional peak of hurricane season from the 1st of August to the 2nd or 3rd week of September. It's a new thing down here for a lot of the new residents. For us old-timers, it's the same deal. Ulysses Awesome probably has a question or two, because he has been sitting here listening to me rant and just pick your mind. Ulysses, are you there? Up. I don't see his. There we go.
Here. Yes, indeed. Can
Please.
you hear me?
Yes, you sound great, sir.
Wonderful. Well, thank you especially for that, because I was thinking I might not. I had some dental surgery today, so I'm recovering a bit from that. So apologies if I sound kind of funny. But hey, Kat, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. John, you really covered a lot of the things that I wanted to ask, but I guess I'm going to throw one more at you, especially in regards to consumer behavior this summer. Are you noticing any changes or shifts in the way that consumers are spending in the restaurant industry from spring into summertime or the end of the summer here?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question in the sense of what most of my cohorts we've been speaking to is we're having some of that ticket fall off, whether, our average tickets are up, which was really one of the true signs of, hey, your revenue, your same store sales are down, but your tickets are up. Yes, of course, that's all price increase, right? But what we're seeing is that fall off of the soda pop. Hey, I'm going to get a sandwich. I'm going to grab a cookie. They're not grabbing the cookie. Right. So, that additional little uptick on those tickets, we're just seeing people pare that back a little bit. Interesting enough is you're looking at kind of day part sales. Breakfast has been really, really difficult, in the QSR and fast casual business. But for us, the actually kind of silver lining has been late night. Late night for a lot of brands are just starting to dig into that. So like Portillo's is going to start digging into late night. Of course, Taco Bell's always been there, but they're digging into that more. But that's been one of the positive day part lifts that we've seen.
What about employment trends? Now, much has been made over the last couple of years about certainly some states and their wage increases, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on how that's impacting the industry, but is both in those states that you're seeing it, and then what are some of the other labor trends going on across the country that you're witnessing?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you could open a paper and not read about the fast food wages in California. Certainly a hot button topic. It was, a lot of us were looking to those brands that were primarily based there to kind of see what that impact's been. Right. So, it has been long tradition in the restaurant space to always keep your labor below 30%. That's just kind of how you can make money. When you looked at Del Taco, when they just reported, I think their labor cost came in at 38%, which was, I think it was like a 400 or 500 bit increase. And I'm old school, so I was like, man, I would have been fired if that's the kind of number I would have thrown out. But unfortunately, that's just kind of the reality that we're in now. People, you can look at specific states, the impact of minimum wage. It's something you have to be thoughtful about, and where I think a lot of people miss. So when you look at a market like Seattle, Seattle's been, they went 15 before everybody else did. They went 15 back in like 2015. But they're over 20 to start there. A market like Denver specifically, when I was looking at their data, their minimum wages increased over the last 4 years, almost I think it was 60%. And you'll have to make some trade-offs and think about how you're going to run your business with that impact of labor. And the unfortunate part is when you are doing that hiring, most restaurants, we were very competitive. They didn't pay minimum wage. You always want to get a better employee. So if I have a great restaurant group and I want best in class people, and the minimum wage was, $8 or $9 an hour, I was going to pay 12 or 10 or 11, right? I wanted to pay more than your typical QSR because I didn't want a typical QSR employee. And right now that competitiveness with skill set, is gone. So we're all kind of paying the same. The only other accoutrements that you can add on is whether you're, giving out more vacation hours, better PTO or better benefits, more affordable benefits, free college education, right? There's a lot that we're trying to do behind the scenes to attract those better employees. Because right now the wage part of that is really gone. Like we can't compete. We're all paying the same. So can I attract you? Like Dick's Hamburgers in Seattle I feel like they're best in class. They do 3 weeks paid time off. You get free health care, right? Even with a family. I make the joke that I want to retire and go work there. Just for the benefits that they have. But we're seeing that, right? We're no longer comparing for the better employee. We're just all the same from that regard. When it comes to resumes or when you're opening up a new store or you're hiring, last summer was when you started to see those transactions fall off. Now, your sales can be up, so everybody thinks that restaurants are hiring, but just because your sales are up and your transactions are down means you don't need that labor hour to make that food. So where most brands or, very seasonal brands, whether you're thinking about ice cream or some of those other categories, they're doing their staffing ramps from, in April, we're going to hire 20 people and over the next few weeks, this is what we're going to do. And you saw these really great hiring ramps heading into Memorial Day and then into your summer. But this last year, folks that I know, they didn't do that, right? They felt like they had the staff that they needed and quite frankly wanted to give more hours to their team. So there's a great monthly survey that comes out from the National Restaurant Association that cues into small, big brands, independents, and franchisees where they gather data around, even just the labor piece of it. And it's been really telling that over the last few months of receiving this newsletter, you're seeing that there's a rise in employee hours decreasing, and that's across the board. Maybe not so much in the fast casual space, but it's still there. But you're certainly seeing it in full service restaurants, family dining, and fine dining. And then it also asks, do you plan on hiring more employees, or are you, do you have less staff than you had last year? And we're seeing that same trend. A few folks that I know opening spaces at this time, they've been telling me, whether it's Arizona, Illinois, even Texas, that when they're opening these jobs, requisitions for maybe one hourly employee or a server or waiter or barista, they're turning off their recs because they're receiving too many resumes after a week or two. So what we speak to in our industry is how many applications per position. 2 years ago, Dutch Bros was getting 20 applications per position, where I know some folks in our industry that work for some pretty fun brands. They're receiving, 50, 60, 75 applications per position.
Astonishing. And by the way, I hate to interrupt you, Mr. Awesome, but I have a question for Kat, which I think is relative to the overall economy. The industry I'm in is impacted by the higher income strata. We're seeing a noticeable decline in the purchase of big boy toys, for lack of a better expression. Have the higher end restaurants seen any noticeable trend change to a decline in income, revenues, etc., or are they maintaining their current position?
When I've been reading about the fine dining space, Gotham just went bankrupt. That was one of the newer ones. I've been seeing that uptick in the finer dining. I say finer dining, whether it's a small independent making quality food. And what I've read into, I don't dive too much into that specific category, but they're speaking to the cost of utilities, the cost of butter, a lot of these costs, and then quite frankly, their dining rooms are not filling up. People might be going there for a special occasion, but it's not hey, it's Friday night, let's go to X, Y, or Z place because we're going to get a really good meal. And I've noticed that even just in my recent travels, places that if I tried to go there on a Friday night, they would tell me that's cute. We'll see you next Friday if you want to leave a reservation, where now I'm walking up and getting seated. So
Wow.
I think we'll probably see more of that, but it's definitely, I felt that wind change over the last few months.
Wow. Well, we're going to invite the entire MacroEdge crew to have a Burns night in Tampa, and some of our staff will be paying for it with their recent market calls. So, Mr. Austin, do you have any more questions, sir?
Yeah, I do. Going back to the real estate portion of it, are you starting to see things, and maybe it's just certain markets, but in lease deals, are landlords beginning to offer more tenant improvement allowances, or are you seeing any changes across the country there in how lease spaces is playing out?
Yeah, I will share they are offering less TI. And I don't know if it's just the access to the capital, but there's been a few deals that I've known about in my peer group that people have to walk away because they're not getting the TI dollars that should be necessary to do their build outs. And unfortunately, that's a bigger impact to a company operated company, because you're having to put more up front, of course, but you're just not going to get that money back. So that's what I've been hearing, is that the TI is not as lucrative as it once was.
And has there been any changing in rent rates with that?
No.
Very interesting, then. Very interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard because there's 1,000 ways to, dissect that. But no, I've seen some spaces as I've been traveling that 3 years ago I would have been paying $38 to $40 a square foot, and now they're going for $55, $60. And that's kind of in a span of 2 or 3 years. So we have not seen, I guess we're going to be the last to know when that should come down. But it hasn't been.
Fascinating.
That is fascinating. You're right. Because my question now to follow up on that is the migration of West Coast restaurants to the East Coast, and we're starting to see it in Florida in droves heading into our peak real estate pricing. Is that the smartest move in the world? Just your generalized opinion on that.
Yeah, no, they better do the numbers. The biggest part for me is if you're going to expand, if we're coming out from the West Coast, and I'm super excited about Florida, you should really do your homework on that market and understand who your competitors are and what's going on. The biggest piece for me is a lot of brands feel that their success, their press clippings, is how fast they're expanding or how many stores they can open, where quite frankly, that's where people are getting in trouble. And when you go that far out from from the umbilical cord, as a lot of folks on the West Coast say, right? Like, that's a long way from home. You have to have operators there that you can trust, that are executing on that right level. And the further away you go, the harder it is to keep track of, is that experience the same experience that they're getting on the West Coast, right? So I caution that. I tell a lot of folks, like, yeah, no, expansion sounds sexy and it's super fun. But have your house in order, own your home, understand what you do, test your business before you leave your home. So if you're in a particular city, if you're in Salt Lake City, go open in different aspects of that market that could potentially replicate what it's like in this part of Florida and see what you see. And I think really smart brands have done that over the years, which is go test in your home market, understand who you are, know who your core customer is, and then expand. The hardest part is people get excited, they jump, and then they're trying to course correct, and they have to get on a plane to go figure it out.
Absolutely awesome analysis. And I'm going to tell everybody we're going to keep this tight to the next 5 minutes because Kat has been very kind with her time. And we really appreciate this because it's an aspect of the economy and the market we don't analyze every day. You never hear about the restaurant industry until a major bankruptcy occurs or until a company fails. And the reason I ask that question, Kat, is, hey, we're excited in Florida that In-N-Out Burger's moving to the Orlando area. We think it's awesome for those of us who are burger pigs and like to enjoy it. I've been to Vegas and California. I enjoy having an In-N-Out Burger on occasion when I'm out there. It's just one of those things you do. But I don't think that a lot of chains moving to Florida understanding the complexities that we're a totally different, unique world. We're the Margaritaville people. We go to the beach in our flip-flops. We go to our restaurants in our flip-flops. The local seafood places and the demographics are what doomed Red Lobster down here. And you have the same situation in Seattle and Portland. The local places supersede the chains unless they pay attention to the individual markets. Is there anything else you'd like to add before the end of this program?
No, I mean, all I'd love to share is, and you kind of made me laugh, which was the stuff you do hear about the restaurant space. It is incredibly scripted. It is incredibly rehearsed. And being a part of the side that scripts and rehearses, we don't always let people see what's going on behind the curtain in our industry, right? And so I just would like to thank not only Dawn, but you and Mr. A and Kenny and Kalani, as I'm kind of looking down, Axilla, all these wonderful folks. You know, as I shared 2 years ago, I don't trade stocks. I'm not a finance person. I just felt like the light wasn't being shed properly into, quite frankly, the industry that I love. And wanted to share that experience. And y'all have opened up, you know, a platform for me to be able to talk with y'all and, quite frankly, learn a lot from everyone. And MacroEdge was a place that allowed that. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much, number one, for allowing me to be within this space, but having me here today to do this with you.
Kat, thank you so much. You do realize that audio clip will be used as a commercial in future programs because Dawn and MacroEdge Team are going to say, John, cut this out. Make it into something bigger. Make it into an advertisement for everybody so we can play that over and over again. But seriously, your insights opened up some new stuff to us. We were behind the curve on understanding how your industry reflects the middle class. And I just want to thank you once again for spending the time with us to fill in the blanks because, like I said, I'm not an expert on this industry. It's not my area. It's not my arena. You have a great evening. And, folks,
all right,
have a good one. We'll talk to you later. And one more time, if you're not a MacroEdge subscriber, if you're not part of the team and listening and getting the data you want, MacroEdge.net/ozone access. It's for radio listeners to this program only. It's for the absolute must-have data that you need to make wise economic and investment decisions. If you're running a business, you might want to pay attention. We provide alternate, accurate data to make sure that all of us are listening and paying attention to the noise behind the noise. You hear it every day on the television programs. You hear it every day on radio, Bubble Vision, the financial papers, the mainstream media. If you're not getting the data you need to make good decisions, MacroEdge.net/ozone access. Try and get a 2-week free trial. Pay attention to what we're saying and actually get the facts. For MacroEdge Radio number 18, this is John Galt speaking. Thank you once again, Kat B, and good night.